How high are mortgage rates now, today, and how high could they go for the rest of 2022 before they fall in 2023? Top of the afternoon to you. I'm Jim Flanagan, broker of record, Coldwell Banker Flanagan Realty, and let's talk mortgage interest rates today. The first thing to understand is yesterday, November 2nd, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, announced that the Fed was raising interest rates 75 basis points, or 3/4 of a point. The first thing that's important to understand is the Fed does not control mortgage interest rates. The Fed controls the Fed funding rate, which is the overnight lending rate. That is what was raised 75 basis points yesterday. So to put you at ease a little bit, mortgage rates actually fell a little bit in the last 24 hours because lenders had already built in that 75 basis point hike. It was no surprise to the lenders. They had already padded it in to mortgage interest rates. So mortgage interest rates actually fell from about 7.5%, 7.25% to just over 7% today. So no, they didn't go from 7 to 7.75. They actually fell a little bit. So let's give a history of how we've gone from just about 3% a year ago to over 7% mortgage interest rates today. And let's talk about the Fed and what's really happening. So about a year and a half ago in 2021, April of 2021, when home values were skyrocketing and interest rates were 3% or under 3%, I made a TikTok where I said, everybody's talking about home values and everybody's talking about low mortgage interest rates, but nobody's talking about inflation. Today, everybody's talking about inflation. You and I experience it when we go to the grocery store, when we go to fill up our car at the gas station. You can't swing a dead cat today without hitting inflation. But a year and a half ago, nobody was really talking about inflation. So when inflation started to spike because the Fed, right, a year and a half ago, we were still in the midst of the pandemic. And what the Fed did was they cut the overnight lending rate, the Fed funding rate, down to about nothing, maybe 0.5 point, maybe 0, right? So that it would fuel the economy, so that we would spend money, so that the economy wouldn't go further or deeper into a recession. They printed money, and this then caused inflation. So the Fed, whose job it is to keep inflation in check, a year and a half ago, they said this inflation is transitory, it's temporary, it'll come back down, and they did nothing with the Fed funding rate. They didn't raise rates. They left it around 3%, and inflation continued to spike. If the Fed had done their job a year and a half ago and raised the Fed funding rate, interest rates, not mortgage interest rates, but interest rates, along with inflation, they would have been able to control this better, balance it out, spread it out. It would have been an easing up, and it should have been. And that would have brought home prices and home values in line and in balance, and not caused this affordability crisis that we're in today. But the Fed messed up. They let it go too long. And then they said, crap. And I'm using the nice word, right? They said, crap. It's out of control. We have to tame it now. We have to bring it under control. And the only way to do that is to raise interest rates. So they've been aggressively raising them all year long, right? It's first time in 50 years that interest rates have actually doubled. 50 years. Not even the Carter administration saw this. So Jerome Powell, this is his job, ladies and gentlemen, right, made a big mistake. And now the only thing he can do is continue to raise interest rates to bring inflation under control. And it looks like it is starting to work. For better or for worse, and as Jerome Powell said, there is more pain on the horizon. We see layoffs starting to happen now, right? First-time home buyers are literally almost priced out of the market. There's still a few of them with good jobs that can afford to buy. And if you can, and I'll get into that in a little bit, don't let the interest rates scare you right now. And I know they are scary, but just follow along with me here. So Jerome and the Fed dropped the ball on their job. And now the only thing they can do is continue to raise rates until inflation comes down. So when you're considering mortgage interest rates, don't focus so much on the Fed funding rate. Keep your eye on the inflation numbers. They're starting to settle down a little bit. I mean, I'm talking a little bit. That's why mortgage interest rates dropped a little bit. So as inflation comes down, or should come down, mortgage interest rates should follow inflation. So if it comes down a little, they'll come down a little. If it comes down a little more, mortgage interest rates will come down a little more. So to answer the question, where are rates going for the rest of 2022? Keep an eye on the inflation numbers. Personally, I don't know. A lot of the experts I talk to are saying we can see them go from 7 to 8, possibly 10, depending on inflation. And other mortgage experts I talk to say they could come back down toward the 6s toward the end of the year if inflation keeps coming down. So watch the inflation report, not the Federal Reserve meeting or their reports. Keep your eye on inflation. As far as 2023 goes, again, everything depends on the next 2 months' inflation numbers. If we head into a recession, as over 60% of the economic experts expect us to do, in a recession, rates always come down. So 2023, most of the mortgage experts I'm talking to, the beginning Q1, the first 3 months of 2023, we could still see rates in the 7s, maybe 8, maybe 6, between 6 and 8%. But in Q2, we could see mortgage interest rates come down optimistically into the 5s. So should you wait until Q2 to buy a house? Not exactly. And here's why. Because if rates come back down, inventory hasn't come up yet, right? This crash everybody's talking about hasn't happened because sellers haven't been putting their homes on the market. Because why would you? Why would you give up your 3% rate to put your house on the market for a 7% rate? Does not make any sense, right? Doesn't compute. So sellers who don't have to sell are sitting on the fence. They're not listing their house. So if this is probably the next 2 months, November and December, right now, the end of Q4, the end of 22, is probably the best time to buy a house because you literally have time to go out there and look at houses. You have fewer bidding wars. You have more leverage. You can negotiate again. People who are selling their houses now have to sell. They're serious. They're motivated. You can have your home inspection again. You can keep your appraisal. Okay? You as a buyer have leverage now, and you can actually find the house that you like, as opposed to the last 2 years where you literally were scrambling and running and 50,000, 100 over, waving this, waving that, just being run ragged. You as a buyer, a home buyer today, have leverage. And if rates do come down, you can refinance into a lower rate and a lower monthly mortgage payment. And I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but Jim, refinancing costs thousands of dollars. Yes, it does. Absolutely. So rule of thumb, take about 3% of your mortgage as what it'll cost to refinance. So let's just say, for an example here, in Toms River, New Jersey, the median sales price is under $500,000. So let's take 500 as an even number. If you had to refinance a $500,000 mortgage, take 3%, that's $15,000 to refinance the mortgage on the house that you love, your dream home. As opposed to a year and a half, a year, 2 years ago, that dream home, you would have paid $25,000, $50,000 more to buy, right? Get where I'm coming from here? Okay? So I understand 15,000 is a lot of money, but it's not as much as 50,000 or 25,000. So to wrap this up, mortgage rates are not dictated by the Fed funding rate. Okay? The Fed funding rate only controls the overnight lending rate. The lenders control mortgage interest rates based on who's going to buy those mortgages, the secondary market, and how they make money selling to the secondary market. That's where mortgage interest rates come from. So don't get scared by the Fed. I know Jerome's a really scary guy, but if you want to know the truth about mortgage interest rates and what's really happening in the housing market here in Toms River, New Jersey, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow this page, call me, DM me, text me. I'll put you in touch with real estate experts, mortgage experts, and we will keep you current on what's happening in the Toms River real estate market. And the rest of the day to yourselves.